Good morning, my name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here to look at the weekly energies with today's Monday's Musings on the 21st of April 2025 at exactly 11:11. As you can see, I'm sat in a very empty environment. There isn't a lot around me anymore to distract the focus. The emphasis is purely on what is in front of us this week. There's a lot to be discussed and looked into, should we choose to. And it does come down to choice, where our attention is being directed, consciously or not. This morning I have woken to a mixture of vibrations that are enticing, to help me feel into past energies, that are also quite full of pressure to figure things out. And in the space of having nothing, as you can see around me, there has been an invitation to sit with what is actually present now. To decide whether to focus on the things that are out of my control. For those that do not know, I'm looking for somewhere to move. I have a few weeks left, and no matter what I do, there seems to be resistance there on many levels, and it has been a creative rites of passage in regards to who I am and what I'm trying to create for the next stage of my own journey. It has also been an opportunity to feel into the knowing that there are some things that I cannot change. No matter how hard I push, no matter how many different angles I do things from. And with that there has been a surrender, but it has been a surrender like no other I have experienced. It hasn't been a letting go. This week we're being encouraged to really feel into the transition and growth that is occurring in regards to how we view nothingness, surrender and the void of potential. It is one thing to let go, but that doesn't mean that we are inactive in that process. That doesn't mean we do nothing in that process. This week we are being encouraged in times of uncertainty to acknowledge that that doesn't mean we are passive. That doesn't mean that we are, I can't think of a better phrase than having things done to us. That doesn't mean that we are a victim of our circumstance. What that means is a receptivity to allow that uncertainty to come into our own areas, into our own bodies, into our own energetic, magnetic fields. That is going to take a lot of courage this week. And it isn't just this week, it is as we go into 2026. Many are stepping forward to be the initiator of change. Now, whilst as a species that has originally included forcing outcomes or actively creating different solutions, those that are in this space are being asked to be in their own energy and allow what needs to be changed to come to them. Less is needed. It's not about responding, it's about receiving. And when we receive, the completion that comes from that union is what creates change. That doesn't mean to do nothing. That doesn't mean to not concentrate on the things that you can do in every moment. And that is going to come down to every moment. So whilst I may not know where we are going to live, I do know the things that I want to take with me. And even that in itself has been a process to really fine-tune and release, purify what is no longer needed. I'm not actually a hoarder of things. I tend to live under the belief that if I haven't used it for 6 months or if it hasn't brought me joy or beauty, then I pass that forward. But even that can be tweaked. Even that can be honed. And that's really what's coming up this week, an opportunity not to It's not about letting go. It's not about having things stripped back. And it is about how we view purity. It is about how we view healing and transition itself. It's not about having these things taken from us, but really honing and concentrating, bringing the essential aspect of ourselves and what it is we need to take forward by going through the process, by admitting the things that we cannot change, by acknowledging where we have done our best, by taking all that energy and that focus off of the things we have tried to make what we want them to be, which comes from an assumption, and bringing that energy back to ourselves and looking at what is in front of us. The more we can stay in our own vibration this week and as we lead into next year, the more we are going to understand that change, growth, death, endings themselves have changed, grown, ended. As we go into next year, it is about how well we can hold space for that. And that doesn't come purely from our responses alone. So what does it come from? Well, this morning I had for want of a better phrase, a great download of my own consciousness, my own energy. And what I heard was codes of consciousness, my own light language, not verbally, but in my own energy, the symbolisms, the sacred geometry, the creativity of me. And all I cook, all I write, all I paint, all I say. And a real recognition of how limited my own perspective of that was. And that is really what we're facing this week. An opportunity to see a not a completely different side to ourselves, but a more fuller, complete side to ourselves. By going beyond our expectations, by bringing that energy back, by becoming more present in what is occurring, fine-tuning, concentrating, purifying, coming back to our original plan, our original blueprint, and our original divinity. For some, that does mean where we find ourselves may not quite hit the mark anymore, and that can be relationships. That can be the world that we are focusing on. I was going to say the world that we see, but there's another level of responsibility coming through as well. The world that we are focusing on and the world that we are actually creating as a result. Now, that will either trigger you or speak to part of something inherent within you. And that's the key this week. If something triggers you and you don't follow that through, or if something causes a reaction or response within you, bring your energy back. Particularly in the more spiritual arena, we often get out of balance in the whole reflective mirroring scenario. Now, that's not to say that we're not all part of each other, and that's not to say that there's some truth there. However, is it helping or hindering? Is it allowing you to move through your process, or is it giving you something to do to avoid the process that you're here to move through? Is it giving you clarity or causing uncertainty? There's a real difference between divine reflection and united growth and gaslighting and projection. And this week we're going to be made more aware of that, because there's going to be, by the end of the month actually, there's going to be some real cantankerous, conflicting views, opinions, energies, stories. But the key is, the way to tell the difference is they're going to feel scattered. They're not going to, even though the stories we come up across may be quite intense and familiar. Moving home for me is a very familiar, intense, wound initiating story. And they may feel that this week. But if we can stay in our own energy, you will sense there's a difference about them. It will almost be as if things are playing out and they're not as accurate as they seem. They will feel very shaky in their foundation. They will be very illusionary. They will be very scattered in their energy. And they will still have the appeal of enticement. And that's where our responsibility comes in. If we are going to react from something this week, if we are going to act in something this week, ensuring we are comfortable in the uncertainty first. Ensuring that we may not know the outcome, that whatever it is we are encouraged to do is divinely led beyond even our own understanding, but it feels in alignment. Concentrated, focused, and purified with our own emotional intelligence. There is a returning back to self. And as I say, that may find many in different scenarios than they had planned. That may find many almost creating an uncertainty, a necessary uncertainty, in order to find their own truth. Is there anything else on that? There are things rising this week in regards to authenticity and how open we are to be seen in our extreme vulnerability. One of the reasons uncertainty is avoided for the beautiful medicine that it brings is because there's this belief in our society that we must know where we're going, that we must know what we're doing, that we must have all the answers, that we must be aligned, and that if things don't go to plan, we are somehow unaligned. Very restricted view that will come under the microscope this week. Part of the process that many of us go through, I haven't met anybody that hasn't actually, the dark night of the soul, the journey to the underworld, the stripping back of everything that we've known, has often been seen as a negative concept because of fear. Because of fear of uncertainty, because of fear of the feminine, because of fear of the darkness, because of fear of endings, because of fear of death, because of a fear of change. As we go into next year, or even in every moment, when we are trying to initiate something, we are going to get resistance if we fear that. And that conflict within our soul essence self and our human, the world sees itself, is what causes the friction for the transformation and the purity necessary to occur. The more we can sit with the uncertainty, the authenticity of uncertainty, the more we can express if we don't know the answers, the more we can express how we are, the more honest we can be with what's going on for ourselves or each other or on social media, whatever is your thing, the more we can be open and honest with that, as vulnerable as it is. And it starts with ourselves first. As vulnerable as it is, the more aligned we actually are. Just because we may not have the answers doesn't mean we're not aligned. In fact, appreciating that we don't have the answers starts the process of finding them. But if we refuse to acknowledge that, that process never reaches its completion, because it's like the journey to Inanna. We've never actually let go of the things that were stopping us from seeking the clarity we wanted. We've said that we're surrendering, but we haven't. And that we're going to be facing this week is the acknowledgement, what we're going to be facing, this week is the acknowledgement of where we may have believed we've let go, but that there's still room to surrender. And to have comfort with that, knowing that that doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen. If anything, by surrendering, so much more can. So this week we have the opportunity to get swept along. We have the opportunity to try and figure things out from focused, unscattered energy, or come back to our body and acknowledge where we are in every moment. Coming back to authenticity, I could have put a lot up in the room around me. It's very stark, it's very bare, and it's very raw and very empty, and that feels quite important this week. Not to make things what they're not, and to really look at what is going on in front of us as well. Authenticity is not a way of gaining likes or approval. Authenticity isn't about the reactions externally to yourself, but your own internally. We are going to see the rise of that on social media. We're going to see the rise of a trend of authenticity, just like we saw a trend of shadow work or a trend of the feminine, or, you know, these buzzwords. Be mindful this week how things are being communicated and from what level of embodiment or completion they are being spoken. Yourself included in anything that you share with yourself. So my eyes are being drawn to my microphone to one side, which is a Yeti microphone, but it's got the word blue on, which is the throat chakra. And I'm drinking from the cup, which is also blue, which is the throat chakra. And it feels very much as if there is not an opening there, an appreciation there of the language that is within us, our emotional intelligence, but also an acknowledgement of creativity as a very way of connecting to our soul's potential, to our own codes of consciousness. But realizing that that comes in every way, shape or form. How we cook, how we speak, what we may write. It isn't always about driven goals this week. Really feeling into that, whether that's trying to find the answers to a situation, which I get can be really difficult, or whether it's trying to find a way to move forward in our career or relationships. Recognizing that creativity, whatever it is you are trying to manifest or create, is a process in itself that isn't about the end result, but what you discover about yourself as a creator, your own magic, your own sacred geometry, your own language, your own light. If we are to go into 2026 in a smoother transition which is available, less time is needed on focusing externally, particularly to the more scattered energies that are all over the place, and not giving them the vision of our own energy. More time is needed to come back internally into the uncertainty of ourself for the gift that it is. With the dark night of the soul, it can often feel as if we've been abandoned. It isn't that we've been abandoned, it is that there's no separation between ourselves and our soul. So if we're seeking answers externally, we will not get them. With the journey with Inanna, or the underworld, the dark goddess Persephone, who has now returned being spring, it is about acknowledging that we let go of everything that we were, but we return with all the things that we were actually underneath the facade. This week, in regards to the authenticity, acknowledging, yes, this is who we are in our vulnerability, but also reclaiming the power that we may have forgotten. By stripping everything back, it isn't about being completely empty and bare, but acknowledging the essence underneath it. So my room is empty in comparison to what it was, but the energy is still there. My energy is still here. And in its less distractive vibration, it's clearer. I feel that it's softer and more connected. This week, yes, there's been some incredible moments for many people that I know of uncertainty, but it isn't about not knowing, it's about regaining what you do understand, what you do know, which is yourself. The more you can connect to that, the more you know what to do in each moment, the more the answers will not come to you, but be created by you. That is the difference that we're facing as we go into 2026. It's not about seeking and forcing outside of us, but allowing these things to radiate towards us, acting in each moment from our own presence and our own embodiment to initiate the change, to create the vision, to be part of the process. Is there anything else? Be mindful of lots of words that can be put in the way this morning and this week in particular. Acknowledging where there may be a lack of belief in what it is we are receiving or saying or sharing. And it's not a lack of belief that it's accurate, it's a lack of belief that it's enough. So it's not a lack of belief this week that things are going to happen. It's a lack of belief in ourselves as the creator of it and that we've done enough. Okay. And that's where the temptation comes to seek external knowledge and opinions. So this morning I was very tempted to look into when the new moon is and to see what's going on, and actually it didn't feel relevant. There's nothing wrong with getting opinions from outside or learning things from outside. But whether it's the tarot or astrology or healing or painting or singing or influencers or whatever, it's about figuring yourself out. If you don't figure out yourself, you're not going to know what these things mean, because they are just the opinions of other people and their experiences. This week we're being guided to acknowledge our own wisdom if we are going to bring that forward. Over the next few months, which there's going to be a big shift, we're going to feel quite a transitional energy over the next few months between completion and change. That is going to be stretched out, almost drawn out. We're going to almost feel as if we're being not pulled apart, but expanded. I can see the fascia actually of the human body, so being very mindful of that. I know my own has been quite flared up over the last few days, but being very mindful of fascia, energies, lymphatic systems, and acknowledging the power of movement. We get so caught up in the movement externally. What's going on internally? Are we actually shifting things? What do we need in order to do that? Does that include focusing on things we can't control, or bringing it back to ensuring that we have purified what we no longer want to carry forward? There isn't enough room for it all within us. It's about allowing these movements, these energies to keep flowing constantly. When we don't, it's because we doubt that we've done enough. When we don't, it's because we don't understand the essence of change. When we don't, it's because we believe when something ends, that's it, it's done. And we can get really caught up in this wanting something to be fixed or finished or completed, from a very naive perspective of believing that once that's done, it's done. It's a continuous process. It's like time. It's not linear. Life is not linear. Energy is not linear. So we shift what we can in that moment, and then we move on to the next. Yes, it will come back, but we don't sit and wait for it to come back, or hope that we do everything that we can do to ensure that it doesn't come back. Energy doesn't die, right? It changes form, allowing that to keep moving within us. Anything else? Let's look at this week and how to best navigate it. And I'm going to do that through the tarot. Day by day, acknowledging, obviously, when we separate things, it is so we can focus on what we can in that moment, but it doesn't detract from the bigger picture. And that feels quite poignant this week. Acknowledging that even the smallest steps are still really important to the whole vision. Okay, so yes, I could spend all my time looking for a home that isn't there right now, or I can compartmentalize my energy. I've spent that time looking for a home. Now what I can do is pack. Now what I can do is organize a removal company. Now I may not know the dates, the times, or wheres, but I know the energy is moving. And I know I need to keep up with that energy that's moving, and that really feels like key. Today, the other thing I woke up to was knowing that something in me had shifted, that I was purely waiting for my body and my environment to catch up. When we talk about alignment, we can often believe that we're not aligned. We can often believe that there's things we need to do. However, those that are going to be called to hold space for change in 2026 may very well find that it's the environment we're waiting to catch up. It's the circumstances around us that we are waiting for them to catch up. That really what we need to do is keep ensuring we are in the shifted energy that has occurred. Some would say holding the light. Some would say pioneers. Some would say whatever you want to call it, light workers, aligned, the 144,000, whatever name you want to give it. It's doing what you came here to do, which is to be you. Doesn't matter how much you glorify that or how much reason you give that. The more authentic you can be, the more those things you are asked to change and shift can catch up and come to you in order to receive that and to evolve. Just because things are taking time doesn't necessarily mean that it's something you need to change. Really looking at where that could come from this week. The insecurities, perhaps, the trauma, perhaps. The doubt. Hyper-independence has been a big key this week. Over the Easter weekend, there was a big shift, individually and collectively, around a feeling of being punished for being who we are. There's been so much that has changed. And that's where I say, if you really feel into where you are now and what you sense in yourself in regards to what's going on around you, even though externally things may feel quite confusing and uncertain, there's a solidity from within that's available this week. And the more we stand in that, we get to see just how fragmented old stories actually are occurring around us. Of course, we have the death card at the bottom here. And this is the energy that many are being asked to embody, not to fear, to recognize that death doesn't just walk along one path, just like change doesn't just occur and then it's done, but also it doesn't get distracted here. You know, death here is carrying the flag of purification, of the white rose, which will really speak to many, the energy of that essence. But it keeps moving forward. And it knows that whatever is occurring here is part of purification. And it keeps on its journey. And it knows that its journey is to be itself. Guarded, yes, protected almost from anything else. So it can assure it remains in the very bones of who it is. This week, that is what we're being guided to do. To recognize, yes, these things down here are us. Of course they are. Collectively, what we're seeing on the world stage and also individually. But there is a greater energy here that is creating the change that has been asked for. And it is up to us now what we choose to focus on in regards to that, our role within that. I would say that's going to come across as harsh or callous, but actually it doesn't feel like that anymore. It feels like many have got to that point where they know, they know that this isn't personal, that this isn't about not caring or caring too much or boundaries, that this is actually way beyond this, that in order for there to be a resurrection, in order for there to be change or purification, there has to be an ending. And many are going to be encouraged to look at what that means for them. Yes, of course, that may be jobs and that may be relationships, but these are all byproducts. And I mean that with no disrespect. These are byproducts of the changes that are occurring within us that now need completion. That doesn't mean they're not going to come back. That doesn't mean that they're over and done with. That doesn't mean that we have to wait for the perfect moment. I'm now cured. I'm now healed. I'm now rich. I'm now have X amount of followers, I'm now completely aligned. That doesn't mean that. And actually that's a real distraction this week, to get it perfect, to get it right, to be a certain way. Well, we haven't achieved this, so actually this hasn't happened. It's an ongoing process. Bringing it back to the core and asking ourselves this week, has it given us clarity? Has it added to our uncertainty? Being honest and authentic, stripping back the distraction, stripping back the bullshit, and getting very true with ourselves this week. We're in Aries season, right? That's the Emperor. That's the other half of this card. It's time to look at where we have destroyed our own foundations, what we can mulch down from that, what we can use as fertilizer to grow, what has been necessary, and what we now need to move forward from. Okay, so 30 minutes in. Energies this week and how to best navigate it. And that feels quite important, that we get to the bottom of what's going on. We look at what we weren't aware of. We really shift into the healing, but the information, the answers are such a small, minute part of it, and they've become huge. The guidance has become bigger than the journey. Yeah, and we have the Seven of Wands at the bottom. Why is that? Because we're defending ourselves here. We're defending ourselves here against what now needs completion. We're defending ourselves here against the external, when what we're actually doing is defending ourselves against the internal. Okay, it's not about out there this week, it's about inside. How can we best navigate these changes? Yes, we can concentrate on what's going on the world stage as a mirrored reflection of us, or we can say, what does that mean to me? What do I need to do, if anything? Maybe I need to protect my energy from these distractions. Maybe I need to watch what I'm being drawn into. There are many situations that have taken longer than potentially they could have because they haven't had the focus that they need. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we bring it back to ourselves. Yeah, the Ace of Pentacles. We bring it back to this new physical beginning that is waiting for us, that has always been waiting for us. How? By deciding what it is we choose to focus our energy on. Seeing our physical energy, our physical body as the gift that it is. Acknowledging that we take in so much information through TV, through newspapers, through the environment. Do we take in as much from the environment? I shared a beautiful clip today on Instagram about an indigenous tribe who said that they have been studying or working with AI for centuries. Only their artificial intelligence was coming from their environment, the rocks, the plants. There's a real opportunity to return to our roots here, and that root is systems that have worked for you before. Not to get too caught up on the external tools, but systems that bring you back to you, that allow you to know yourself so that it doesn't matter what situation you get in. Yes, there's going to be uncertainty, but that you feel strong enough in your capabilities within that. We are never, no matter how many cards you read, no matter how many planets you look at, no matter how many plants you ingest, you are never going to have all the answers to everything, because the world, consciousness, the psyche is a living entity, constantly changing, constantly evolving. All the prophecies in the world aren't going to predict every single potential outcome. And that's the thing, we're so restricted in how we see reality. But how we see ourselves, how connected we are to our own indigenous soul, is what's going to help us cope with any uncertainty. More than that, the more we can hold space for uncertainty and bring it into us, into our own void of creativity, the more we get to have a say on the visions of the world that we continue to manifest. It's never about finding out the answers externally. It's always been about what's going on internally for us. How much do we believe in ourselves? How much faith do we have in ourselves to create the change that we're looking for? Acknowledging we are that gift. Okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. At the beginning of the week, and well, the beginning of the week is going to feel quite clear, but as we work on through the latter parts of the week, there's going to be confusion there all the time. We seek that external advice. So on the Monday, we have the Hierophant. We have the ability to understand that everything has got us to this point to help us reclaim the wisdom of who we are. Or we have the choice to allow that knowledge to dictate what we're going to do. Recognizing anything that we are discovering about ourselves is going to be reflected externally. For the opportunity to take responsibility on the energies that we choose to work with or alongside. Looking at our own narratives. Looking at our own translation of something, particularly when confused, our own translation of something, and whether or not we are serving that up to suit our own stories. Now that's human nature. That's something we all do. But how much of our direction has that taken control over? We can all say, oh, one magpie. That means sorrow. That means individuality. That means da 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 da. Oh, that's exactly where I am in life. That must be a sign and a synchronicity. Don't stop there. Question that. Question yourself. Question what you're seeing. Question what you're feeling. Knowing that to question is to learn. Without uncertainty, there are no questions. Without questions, there are no learnings. Without learnings, there is no wisdom. Without wisdom, there is no change. There is no evolution. There is no growth. Now, I know that growth can be a very conflictual energy for many, and that feels like the very essence that we're being encouraged to look at as we go into the Tuesday. With the Three of Pentacles, these two cards are beautiful. You almost have the inside of the church and the workings of the church. We almost have that image that's being portrayed and the option to actually create with that image. Growth, acknowledging what that actually means to us individually and collectively. Where is it coming from? Is growth coming from a not being good enough energy, a dogmatic society that says we have to be a certain way, our own included? Or is it coming from the foundations of building something that brings more faith, more hope, more belief, a solid footing to create something different? On the Wednesday, that's going to bring up essential questions in the Seven of Cups. That's going to bring up an opportunity to really look at our shadow, or to see where we have seen things through our shadow. Any healing there in regards to our home, our gifts, our offerings, what abundance means to us, what relationships mean to us. As we acknowledge that all the time we see these things separate from us, we're going to feel uncertain. We're going to feel unsure. That could potentially make things quite enduring emotionally this week, because we're seeing them separate. Once we start to see all these aspects as us, every healing that we've had, an opportunity to return to who we were. Every abundant situation or lack of abundant situation, they're both the same sides of one coin, right? Is an opportunity to lead us back to who we are. Every time we forget who we are given uncertainty. We are given the unknown of ourselves so that we can question whether or not we have grown, whether or not we have built our own wisdom based on the perspectives of somebody else, or whether they are coming from a deeper, not separate, more complete aspect of our soul. Shadow isn't separate from us. Other people's opinions and situations and projections and views, they're not actually separate from us on a soul level. They're all part of the one thing, the one energy. Doesn't mean they have to be everything, our own included. This week there's a real opportunity for curiosity. We can see it as frustrating. We can see it as initiating. We can see it as restrictive, dogmatic, or we can see it as an opportunity to expand beyond our own rigid beliefs. On the Thursday we have the Eight of Wands, and that's where things start to really shift and start to move. I think there is a new moon over the weekend, so we start to feel that really on the Thursday with the Eight of Wands, as we acknowledge what alignment actually is. Alignment doesn't always mean having the answers. It doesn't always mean knowing where we're going, but alignment is to be present in everything that is occurring and know that we have the ability to hold space for that emotionally, physically, spiritually, intellectually. Intellectually feels like key because on the Friday we have the Knight of Swords. We can almost go backwards Friday if we try and charge through what is occurring. Not just on the Friday, but on the Friday we may particularly feel that, because the Knight of Swords is going in the opposite direction, and it's quite an attacking energy. It's quite forceful in regards to how we think we should be feeling, why that has brought uncertainty, or rather it will create uncertainty. It will also separate us from energies that could potentially help us build a stronger foundation. We may end up attacking those energies, and that is going to bring forth a conflict within our own faith. Now, is this necessary? Everything happens for a reason, right? Now, if this is what you need in order to become realigned, then so be it. But this week, ensuring that you have some kind of structure in place, that in those moments where it feels as if you're almost being forced to do something that you may not want to do, or being told to figure things out when you don't feel ready, or even dictating to yourself what it is you need to experience in order to achieve things, allow yourself to connect to what brings you magic, what brings you creativity. Find an outlet for this, otherwise the mind is going to race this week. It's very trippy energy. This morning I woke up and found myself in that space again between what we call the knife's edge, between what was and what will be. And it can be a very it can almost cause quite a bit of nausea this week. It can almost cause quite a bit of dizziness, what I used to call funny turns, where, you know, it's like a disassociation or a leaving of the body this week. So being very mindful of that and grounding in nature, grounding in things that bring you joy, grounding in your own creativity this week is really going to be key. Feels as if come Friday, actually there's a line drawn in the sand with things, and that may come through uncomfortable situations, but it may very well have been necessary, because come the weekend it's almost as if the sun starts shining again. It's almost as if this clean slate, by the end of this week, things are never going to be the same. By the end of this week, it feels as if at the very beginning we are being initiated almost on the Monday into a new energy to work with, a new form of creativity, a new way of seeing ourselves that is going to cause a bit of discombobulation in our own reality, in our own psyche, in our own consciousness. And what we have been aligning to up until that point is going to change come the Friday. It is going to take some mental rationaling of what is going on, so as not to get too caught up in what is occurring around us. Keep coming back to the body, keep coming back to the emotions, allow things to shift and move, so that at the weekend we have this new light coming through. And that's what I see, a new light coming through. It isn't a new light, it's that we've made space. And we've made space by balancing all the elements within us, by balancing our thoughts, by balancing our ambition, our drive, by balancing our emotions, and by balancing our body. We've come back into humanity. We've come back into humanness. So anything that helps you to come back into this world, and I understand it can be a world that we try and avoid. Again, we're not going to know if we're not aligned if we don't come back into how we feel. We're not going to know what is being created if we separate ourselves from being the creator. So coming back into the body, taking time to see where our mind is at, feeling into our emotions, ensuring that we feel driven and ready to do something rather than forced or because we should. You can't make answers appear that haven't been formed yet. Acknowledging creativity for what it is. You know, there's the, I think it was Michelangelo with one of the sculptures, it might have been David, that everybody had tried, or it may have been the ceiling, 16th chapel. Whatever it was, everyone had tried to create art out of this. Everyone had tried to make something appear out of this, to give this form an answer, because they had tried to figure it out beforehand, whereas Michelangelo just chipped away at what wasn't needed and allowed something to be revealed. This week, that is what's occurring. We are being chipped away at. Yeah, we are being given this opportunity to not release things, not to have things removed, but to have ourselves revealed. As a result, I see like a really nice facial, a skin peel, almost a shedding of the tail, like the serpent does. Come the weekend, there is, from the end of this week particularly, but over the next few months, a period of change to such a level, on an energetic, vibrational level, that it's going to be discombobulating. It's going to be uncertain. And if we're not comfortable with that, then it's going to be doubly bloody hard. So getting back into figuring out your own light. How do you do that? You put what you feel into something creative. You allow, this morning with journaling, when I had the codes of my own consciousness coming through, I didn't do anything special. I was literally watching the ink flow on a page, writing a load of gobbledygook, just watching my hands do spirals and shapes. And what I'm doing there is I'm connecting to my own soul's energy, my own creative force. You get the same when you cook. You get the same when you hold people that you love. You get the same when you're doing gardening. You get the same through physical embodiment. Spirituality, magic demands physicalness. It demands humanity. It demands a tangible result. It demands something to have this creative energy put into, not just the mind. Not just goals and ambitions, not just emotions, but a physical action also. To surrender does not mean we stop. It does not mean we don't do anything. It just means we don't respond to that no longer can help us create something different. By the weekend, you have the Magician and the Sun card. By the weekend, you have that innocence, that curiosity that has taken full momentum, that is now being channeled into whatever we are magically manifesting this weekend. We recognize that we are the channel. We recognize, and that's going to be different for everybody. There are going to be some people, when they're fully embodied in their energy, they have a jovial vibration. There are going to be some people, when they're fully embodied in their energy, they have a grounded, rooted vibration. This weekend, we are going to have glimpses, for some more, of our own vibration and what it is it's here to do, by being complete as the channel, channeling in, bringing that light, that force, that creative endeavors and vibrations and hopes and wishes and wisdom and my screen went, and everything, bringing it in through us and allowing it to move. Having fun with the uncertainty as a collaborative partner of creating something different. Okay, so we're 46 minutes in. So we have 3 major arcanas this week. The Hierophant, the Magician, and the Sun card. It isn't about spirituality telling us what to do. There's a big difference between spirituality and religion. It isn't about being controlled. It isn't about being, I want to say, harvested or farmed, and I'm not going to get into that, but it isn't about having our energy used against us. Okay, thank you. It is about our energy coming in and us creating a new, lighter vision here. It is about us bringing that joy of what it means to be a human, of what it means to be, spirituality isn't about stepping away from the body. It isn't about creating something that's so magnificent, it's a huge legacy that we leave behind. It's in everyday things also. It is in our cooking, it is in our gardening, it is in painting our rooms, it is everything that we give presence to is spirituality. Now, we may not like that. Everything that we give focus to, everything that we react to, that is spirituality, that is magic, okay? Being discerning with that this week. It's pretty simple to do if we feel into the wisdom of the inner child or the inner wild here, if we feel not into the pain of that, but the wisdom of that. How does it make us feel? We get so caught up in alignment, so caught up in what that looks like externally. How do we feel? Now, I'm not saying we must feel positive or happy in things, but are we allowing ourselves to authentically feel? That's alignment. That's magic. That's the magician's table, if you will. What judgments do we have on that? What is our surface looking like before we even create anything? What are we assuming from our body? What are we dictating from our body based on how we expect it to be? How is that impacting the magic that we bring? The joy that we have in doing so? Don't get caught up in your goals and forget the whole process of living. Life is a goal, no? Experiences are a goal, no? We then have, well, literally one card of all the minor arcanas. There's great balance here in recognizing the new ness that needs to come through. Now, these new beginnings, these turning points, if you will, are from a physical level. We are being encouraged to look at what energies we're collaborating with, our own included, what stories we're collaborating with, what people we're collaborating with, and what that actually says about us. We often talk about boundaries, but having the responsibility to say, actually, the more I interact with this energy, the more this story is being recreated. What do we need to do with that? Where do we see ourselves in that? Have we become caught in the drama triangle, or can we witness things unfolding? A lot more change comes from witnessing than it does from doing. Now, I know that's going to trigger people because it triggered the shit out of me, but I've been a midwife. I've witnessed death. I've witnessed my own crap as well, and I've been caught in it. And when I'm caught in it, I can't do anything but add to it. I was sharing with my husband the other day, there's a real energy that's rising that if we add to fire and then put our hand in the fire, we cannot blame the fire for the damage that is caused to us. This week, if we can step back on small things and then recreate a bigger version of that, if we can just witness ourselves first and foremost in a situation and ensure that we're not caught in something on such a deep level. I see like a fly caught in a spider's web. That we're not caught in something on such a deep level that causes uncertainty. There's a big difference between creative potential and man-made uncertainty. If we're continuing to put ourselves in the same situations, or if we're becoming unaware of what we are caught up in, that creates uncertainty, not about what's going on around us, but who we are. If we can stand back and witness that, greater change will occur. And I appreciate there's a whole rewiring of the system, yeah? That's a less do, more witness, and recognise that that's actually doing more in the long run. And that's a whole new way of being. I appreciate that. And that in itself can cause emotional uncertainty. We have the new beginnings here with our emotions, the Seven of Cups. Those new beginnings coming from recognising that what we are seeing isn't a separation from us. It is part of us, and taking responsibility for that. What we are seeing in the world around us affects us, taking responsibility for the effect that is occurring here. Acknowledging where our shadow may be enticing us to see more than we wish to actually look at, by making it more complicated than it needs to be. Don't get caught up in the spaghetti junction type energy of projections, and really feel into reflecting this week for the emotional intelligence that it brings. The new beginning from a spiritual perspective is the mastery of what alignment actually means to us. It doesn't mean that we're always happy. It doesn't mean that everything's always going great. For some it does, and I acknowledge myself allowing that to come in too. It doesn't mean that everything could be clear and swift and obvious, but it can also. Alignment, spiritual alignment, means embodiment of the experience that is occurring around you. Mastering that. The sword card that we have is to do with our actions, and it's to do with the Knight of Swords. How driven are we mentally? Where are we driven from? What is controlling the narrative that we see when we look at embodiment, or that we try to understand when we examine our emotions, or that we physically manifest in the stories that we continue to collaborate with? Right, I recognise I'm 53 minutes in, so one card for this week. And it feels important not to have an expectation on what that would be. I was going to say to bring completion or closure or help us know. One card for this week. When we open ourselves to uncertainty, we open ourselves up to answers we didn't even think we knew we needed. Okay? When we open ourselves up to go beyond what it is we know, we discover so much more about who we are. It reminds me of the medicine wheel. If we're looking at things in the space of the unknown, from a place of the unknown, you'll never find it. So on the medicine wheel, we tend to go to the next energy the bigger picture or what needs to be healed here. You cannot find the answers by looking at something from the same energy. Okay, one card this week. Four of Swords. Oh, there's two. There's actually, I looked at the Page of Wands to the side of me, and there's Four of Swords here and the Ten of Swords in my hand as well. For things to complete themselves, they need us to step out the way. For things to finish what is going on, for change to occur, we have to stop doing the same things. We have to stop adding more mental confusion to the energy. We have to acknowledge what it is we are asking or being asked spiritually to now bring forward. Take a moment this week to reflect, to pause, to be with your body, to let go of trying to control things that you cannot, and be present with what you can. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Monday.